What should the Buffalo Bills do about Christian Benford's contract extension? Should they re-sign Rasul Douglas? What does the future hold for Kaiir Elam? We're exploring the dynamics of the Buffalo Bills cornerback room today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Well, folks, welcome in. We're talking cornerbacks today on this episode. A lot of different things to get into. Really want to set the tone for the offseason at this position group and explore, what they already have in place. We'll talk about how I think the Bills should attack this position group this offseason. Let's start with Christian Benford, a 2022 sixth-round pick, number 185 overall. He's 24 years old, turns 25 in September. He's entering the last year of his four-year, $3.8 million rookie contract. And he does get a bump this year due to the proven performance escalator, which is available to non-first-round picks in the fourth year of their rookie contract based on playing time. If they reach certain snap percentage thresholds or they make the Pro Bowl, they get a bump in that last year of the rookie deal. So his fourth year salary is $3.3 million. In 2024, Benford played in 15 games with 15 starts on the field for 95% of the defensive snaps in those 15 games, collected 58 tackles, 10 pass breakups, 2 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, a fumble recovery, and 3 tackles for loss. As for his 2024 review, I think he had an elite season. I thought he was one of the 5 best cornerbacks in the entire NFL last year. Outstanding. And he can do it all. He can play man coverage, press coverage, zone. He's got ball skills. He tackles. He defends the run. He's a stud. And he is now stacked back-to-back really, really high-end seasons on top of each other. This past season, 12 of 18 games, including the playoffs, he allowed under 25 yards. He allowed more than 50 yards in 3 of 18 games. That's it. He allowed 2 or fewer catches in 12 of 18 games. And he nearly did the same stuff last year. In 2023, 9 of 16 games under 25 yards allowed. He allowed 2 or fewer catches in 10 of 16 games last year. And he allowed more than 50 yards in only 3 of 16 games. I mean, talk about just consistency. He's not giving up anything. He's a technician. He's athletic. He's got good size. This guy is checking all the boxes. In fact, in 2024, he had the fewest yards per coverage snap allowed of any cornerback in the NFL. He allowed 1 reception per 15.8 coverage snaps. That's 4th best in the entire NFL. Oh, by the way, he's missed 3 tackles in the last 2 years combined. His missed tackle rate is under 2% across the last 2 seasons. In every imaginable way, Christian Benford is a stud, a true number 1 cornerback in the NFL. And he's eligible for a contract extension. SpotRack has his market value at $23 million per season. The highest paid cornerbacks in the NFL, Patrick Surtain and Jalen Ramsey, they both signed extensions last year. They get $24 million per season. that winds up being 9.4% of the cap at signing. And so I'd guess that Christian Benford is going to be 8.5%, 9% of cap at signing. Now, the good news is it feels like over and over again, players that re-sign in Buffalo typically come under these market projections, just like Khalil Shakir did literally yesterday. Spencer Brown came in at a value. Ed Oliver came in at a value. So I'm not exactly sure where this falls. I'm guessing it's going to be pretty healthy. I would guess between $20 and $25 million a season. But you're talking about one of the best young cornerbacks in all of football. And he's very quickly become maybe my favorite player on the defensive side of the football. The way he competes is just, I mean, if you love football, you love tough football players that are technicians that make plays. I mean, you love Christian Benford. On a snap-to-snap basis, just the amount of strain and effort that he puts out there and what it takes to get a catch on this guy is a lot. You're going to have to earn it. And if you catch it, you better tuck that thing away because he's going to knock it out. Exceptional football player. That's Christian Benford. He's an exceptional football player. And I have zero doubt that he gets a contract extension. Zero doubt. Everything the Bills could ever want in a draft pick that they hit on late day 3 that's earned his way, that beat out the first round pick, Kaiir Elam, the same year, and has just emerged like this. You want to talk about player development and earning everything and not only just becoming a good player, but an exceptional player. I mean, that's Christian Benford. So obviously I think a lot of his 2024 season and his 2023 season and his trajectory overall. So when I consider the outlook for Christian Benford, get the extension done. I do it as quickly as possible. It only goes up 2 years of rock solid production, consistency, and I expect him to continue to be one of the very best young cornerbacks in the NFL. You know, I think about this defense in general, and in the next segment, I'm going to talk about Rasul Douglas and Taron Johnson. I've talked about Terrell Bernard, even Ed Oliver to an extent. Like, I think the circumstances of the defense took away from a lot of players being the best version of themselves, but Christian Benford transcended that. Absolutely delivered despite injuries on the second level, the pass rush not being that good. You know, new safety tandem where you had injuries there. Didn't matter to Christian Benford. It affected other players. But Christian Benford's proved that he's that dude at cornerback. Now, you don't love that he's had injuries, right? Like, he missed one game, I think, with an ankle. And then, of course, he was concussed against Baltimore and then concussed in the AFC Championship game. You don't love seeing that. And then, of course, last year in the playoffs, something happened against Pittsburgh. I don't remember exactly what it was, and he didn't play the next week. You want to get that tightened up? But it's really it. And he's not really missed time otherwise. Unfortunately, it's been late in the season when you don't want it. So that would be the one thing you put down and say, okay, yeah, we need to get that tightened up. But very, very excited about Christian Benford. Probably as excited about Christian Benford as I am any player on this roster. All right, coming up on the other side of it, we're talking Rasul Douglas, Taran Johnson, and Kaiir Elam. A loaded segment ahead, folks. Be sure to stick with me. All right, welcome back. Let's talk about Rasul Douglas. The Bills got him through a 2023 in-season trade. The deal was Rasul Douglas and a 5th-round pick for a 3, of course, with the Green Bay Packers. Rasul is 30 years old. He turns 31 in August, and his contract is expired. So he's a free agent or scheduled to be a free agent, and the Bills will have to decide on whether or not they want to bring him back or not. In 2024, he played in 15 games with 15 starts, on the field for 87% of the defensive snaps, 58 tackles, 5 pass breakups, no interceptions, 1 forced fumble, and 5 tackles for loss. As far as his 2024 review, I thought it was definitely a down year for him. Thought he had several really good seasons in a row. And with a player like Rasul Douglas, you worry about the combination of age and athletic decline. Wrong side of 30, and a guy that on the most athletic day of his life, not very athletic, right? Relative to NFL corners. I'm not talking about regular people, right? Relative to NFL corners. And with Rasul, I thought you saw some miscommunications with the safeties that you didn't see from Benford. It's the same safeties. But whether it was help not being where he expected it to be or squeezing and passing off routes in zone coverage, he just kind of felt like it affected him more than it did Benford. I don't recall it happening to Benford at all. Now, I think his run defense was outstanding, his tackling, top tier, but the coverage, the ball production was way down, no interceptions. And that was the thing with Rasul Douglas. This dude took away the football, and he literally didn't at all this past season. And so my recommendation in my 2025 outlook for the Bills with Rasul Douglas is to move on. I think he gave you what you needed with the trade. I mean, obviously his 2023 season that he was in Buffalo for like half the year, he was tremendous, took away the football, made a lot of impact plays. And then this past year, I thought things caught up with him a little bit. And this is exactly the type of player that I think the Bills should continue to not feel an urgency to bring back, right? 31, coming off of a bad year. I'm not going to assume that there's better days ahead. Go ahead and let him go. I've enjoyed Rasul Douglas, don't get me wrong, but this is the National Football League. It's a limited resource environment. Lean into upside, right? That's what I want to see this team do with the decisions that they make with personnel. Lean into youth, lean into upside. That's not Rasul Douglas. Let's talk about Taron Johnson, 2018 fourth-round pick, number 121 overall. He's 28 years old, turns 29 in July, entering year one of his 3-year, $31 million extension. 2024, he played in 12 games with 12 starts, on the field for 84% of the snaps in those 12 games, 65 tackles, 5 pass breakups, 2 interceptions, forced fumble, fumble recovery, and 1 tackle for loss. I thought it was a challenging year for Taron Johnson. And we knew it was going to be challenging because this was the first year since 2018 that no Trey White, no Jordan Poyer, no Micah Hyde. You know, that back seven has been together a lot. Even Milano, he winds up going down in training camp. And so, like, Taron Johnson was the veteran guy in that secondary, in that back seven. And then, you know, things kind of crumbled around him a little bit. And so, big opportunity for him to step up. And then he goes down with a forearm injury in week 1. Friendly fire with Taylor Rapp. Forearm injury keeps him out multiple weeks. The defense, I don't think the Bills' defense was ever super stable in 2024. Talked about this a million times. With Bobby Babich taking over, a lot of new coaches, personnel transitions, injuries. They never really found the formula. And I think that affects a guy like Taron Johnson, where a lot of the way that the defense is structured is to funnel targets to the slot. They rely on him a lot for fitting the run as a second-level defender. And I think that instability affected him. And I don't think it was Taron Johnson's best season. Now, I do think he had some of the most impactful moments of his career. Like when I think about my favorite splash plays that the defense made, Taron Johnson was right there. Think about the game-sealing interception against the Jets. Picking off Aaron Rodgers to clinch that win. Pick 6 against the Colts. Remember the second Miami game? They had the ball to start the second half. We're getting ready to extend their lead, driving. They bust a big run. I think Raheem Mostert busts a big run, and Taron Johnson peanut punch. Kaiir Elam picks it up, and the Bills wind up taking the go-ahead touchdown right there. Huge splash plays. But I think probably in coverage, when you factor in just all the moving parts around him in the secondary, a pass rush that wasn't very consistent made life difficult for Taran Johnson. So when I talk about a 2025 outlook for Taran, I think we know exactly what to expect from him. The big thing is be stabilize and be better around him so that he can be the player he's supposed to be in the slot for this team. Let's talk Kaiir Elam, a 2022 first-round pick, number 23 overall. 23 years old. He turns 24 in May. Still young. This guy's about to turn 24 in May. There will be players drafted that are older than him. He's entering the last year of his contract. 4-year, $13.5 million rookie deal. And I know that a lot of people are probably curious about, can the Bills get out of this contract? Well, they can. It just doesn't help them. If he's released now or after June 1st, it doesn't matter. 0 cap savings, and you take a $4.4 million dead cap hit. If you trade him, you do get $2.6 million in cap savings, but accumulate $1.8 million in dead cap. So a release makes no sense. That won't happen. I'll tell you, that won't happen. If Kaiir Elam is not on the Bills in 2025, it's because they traded him. And I don't know what type of trade value he has. I know that for a lot of teams, when they consider players like Kaiir Elam, they'll go back to their scouting report on him. You know, he was the number 23 pick in the draft. That wasn't really a surprise that he was a first-round pick. I think a lot of people thought that end of the first round was kind of the appropriate range for him to go. So, you know, maybe there's some GM out there that really liked him, and not that they're going to give up much for him, but if he was a pot sweetener in a trade, you can think about that. Or, you know, maybe there is a pick swap or something. You know, it's possible. That's what I'm saying. It's possible. In 2024, he played in 13 games with 4 starts. On the field for 35% of the defensive snaps, only 19% of the special team snaps. And that's why sometimes he was inactive. Doesn't help on special teams. And if you're a depth corner, you got to help on special teams. Collected 26 tackles, 2 pass breakups, had the fumble recovery against Miami, and 2 tackles for loss. As for his 2024 review, I think the reality here is that the plan, right, first-round pick, has not gone as expected. And I can't remember if it was Bean or McDermott, but one of them said, you know, hasn't gone the way we expected, hasn't gone the way Kaiir expected, right? I will say if there's a bright spot for 2024 with Kaiir Elam, I think it was by far his best year of run defense and tackling. Thought he was actually very good when he had the chance to do that. And look, he basically played all of both New England games, played a lot of that second Miami game. The Detroit game, he started for Rasul Douglas, if I'm not mistaken. So he played a little bit. Not a ton, but he played some. And so there's enough, that 35% of snaps in 13 games. Of course, the AFC Championship game, that certainly happened as well. But I thought there was enough of a sample size of seeing him defend the run and tackle that I was encouraged by that. But obviously, the lasting impression that everyone has with Kaiir Elam right now is the AFC Championship game. And he got cooked. And the Chiefs went after him, and he got cooked. Now, I think that the Bills structurally had a lot of issues in that game. They're playing man coverage. I thought the levels of their defense was not set appropriately. They fell victim to picks. I mean, yeah, Kaiir Elam struggled just like pretty much every defensive player on the Bills. They really didn't. I don't think they had a good understanding of what they wanted to do. And you hear Sean McDermott said, you know, they pivoted to playing man. It was a disaster. And of course, you know, I also think about that first New England game where Kayshon Boutte really got the best of him. Now, I think that Kaiir Elam has shown us at times in 3 seasons like that he is a better player. There's been inconsistency. There's no question. I'm not ignoring that, but there's also been good. He's had good moments. He's talented. He's got ball skills. Now, it's concerning that this is the Bills, and they've done a very good job with developing defensive backs, and this is like the highest pedigree guy that they've had. At least the highest draft pick. I mean, Trey White was a first-round pick, but Kaiir Elum's a higher first-round pick. He's a high pedigree guy at a team that's very good at developing defensive backs, and it hasn't really come together at all. So when I look at my 2025 outlook for Kaiir Elum, there's a piece of me that has some hope. But obviously, you can't rely on the guy, right? He hasn't performed at a level that says, all right, that's a starter. And so I think he should be in the mix next year, but with meaningful competition. And if there was a cornerback competition of Kaiir Elam, Jamarcus Ingram, a mid-round draft pick, and a veteran, I think that's pretty healthy. It's obviously a do-or-die year for Kaiir Elam. Very young, turns 24 in May, physically gifted, but it's now or never. And so we'll find out with Kaiir Elam in 2025. All right, on the other side of it, we'll talk Jamarcus Ingram. I have a pretty strong take about him that you'll not want to miss, and then we'll really set the tone for the offseason. Folks, be sure to stick with me. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, never really feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets. If your first $5 bet wins, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, let's talk Jamarcus Ingram. 2022 undrafted free agent. He's 27 years old, turns 28 in September, entering year 2 of his 2-year, $1.9 million contract, and he'll be a restricted free agent next year. In 2024, he played in all 17 games. He started 1. He was on the field for 19% of the defensive snaps, 67% of the special team snaps, collected 24 tackles, 4 pass breakups, 2 interceptions, right? Both against Miami, 1 being a pick 6, and 2 tackles for loss. As far as his 2024 review, and here's the big take that I have on Jamarcus Ingram. I think Jamarcus Ingram is the best special teams player on the roster. In terms of covering kicks and covering punts, I thought his ability to get down the field and make tackles was the best of any player on the team. And that's huge. And I think that's the story with Jamarcus Ingram. It's the ways that he's been able to present value through special teams contributions and versatility on defense. It's very impressive. He could play in the slot, he could play outside, and he could play in that dime role. You know, Jamarcus Ingram, when Taron Johnson went down in week 1, Cam Lewis then becomes the slot. And of course, the Bills have this dime package that they run about 20% of the time. And when Cam Lewis went from the dime defensive back to the slot, it didn't take long for Jamarcus Ingram to step into that dime role. That's a lot of value that he provides. Again, backup slot, backup outside corner, dime defense, and, oh, by the way, I just told you, I think he's the best player on the team covering kicks and punts. That's how you do it. You want to be a UDFA that had, no interest really in terms of, being a draft pick, and you stick around, you find opportunities, and this is what you can do. And I think Jamarcus Ingram is exactly the player that the Bills love having around to point to and say, hey, you can be the next Jamarcus Ingram. And it's very impressive what he's been able to do in that role. As a depth defensive back, everything you could, all the boxes you could check to give yourself value and staying power in the league, he's figured it out. Now, I don't know you want this guy starting for you? Probably not, right? But can he get you out of a game? Can he be a sub-package player and special teams? Yes. So as for the 2025 outlook here, looking for the same deal. Special teams, depth at multiple spots in the secondary. and be that guy that the next crop of UDFAs that come in, whatever position they're at, hey, you want to stick around? Do what that guy's doing. Great player to have around. And obviously a very, very impressive what he's been able to do for himself in the NFL. So let's tie a ribbon on this. Let's really set the tone here for this offseason. What do the Bills have? Well, I think that's the good news is everyone's under contract except for Rasul Douglas, and you're probably not mad about that. I think Rasul Douglas has run his course in Buffalo. So what do the Bills need? Number one, you need to get Christian Benford's contract taken care of. I can't wait for that podcast. That's going to be an easy one, right? There's a lot of glowing things to say about Christian Benford. It's so obvious to me that you get this contract done. Again, I'm expecting it to come in 8.5% of cap. It's probably $20 to $25 million a year. And I don't hesitate for a second on that. You need Taron Johnson to be Taron Johnson. And I don't have a lot of doubt with that happening. But I do think that the defense needs to stabilize around him for Taron Johnson to be the player he's supposed to be for this defense. I think you need to get the right competition in place for Kaiir Elam. This is really important, right? So the whole thing here is Rasul Douglas, I'm fine with him walking. It's obviously not my decision to make, but that's what I think the Bills should do. And I think some of the messaging aligns with my thinking there. But you got to have the right plan, right? Opposite of Christian Benford, what's your plan? Certainly Kaiir Elam should compete for that job. And like I said in the last segment, Kaiir Elam plus a mid-round draft pick, and maybe if the right corner's there on day 2, sure, right? Like, I mean, I'm not going to be disappointed in that. Plus Jamarcus Ingram, and then that economical veteran option. You know, I don't think the Bills should really be looking to tie up a bunch of money in the CB2 spot. I mean, you're going to be paying Benford, you're going to be paying Taran Johnson. You know, you can't have everyone paid. And so this would be a spot where I think you can figure it out. You know, I think about Shaq Griffin, Akello Witherspoon, those types of veteran corners that are out there. Like, that's who I'd be interested in considering. Now, I'm going to watch some tape. I'm planning on a Substack article probably early next week, maybe even end of this week, where I'm going to profile several veteran corner options. And I think I have like maybe 12 written down that I'm going to watch here. And I'll, flesh out my thoughts and share them with you. But I think there's going to be some economical options here. I don't think the Bills have to go and pay Byron Murphy or pay DJ Reed or anything like that. That's not the type of investment that I'm looking for. But I think between those players kind of competing, I think you can get your answer. And I'm not trying to just get by, right? Like, that's not what I'm trying to say. But in the NFL, you can't have a high investment at every single spot. And like I said, with paying Christian Benford what I think the Bills are going to pay him, Taron Johnson's handsomely paid slot corner, this is a spot. It's just like your offensive line. The Bills can't pay 5 starters market contracts. They got to have an economical option or two, and that's what they have in their guards. I think you got to look at this spot as an opportunity to get the production that you need, but it can't be at a high cost. Again, mid-round pick plus Kaiir Elam plus Jamarcus Ingram plus a veteran. And, I think I'll uncover who those veterans are with some convictions here soon, but I'm just very much preliminarily looking at the guys, and I see names that make sense to me. And certainly there'll be more players that become free with cuts and releases that are coming. We'll see what happens here. But obviously it's a need. Yeah, the Bills got to find the right mix of competition at CB2, and that starts with making a good veteran move, and then I think complementing that with a mid-round draft pick. All right, folks, there you have it. Cornerbacks. We got one more position to do, safeties, and I'll also tie in special teams to that. That's my plan for tomorrow, and obviously stuff to figure out there with Damar Hamlin as an expiring contract. Cole Bishop, is he ready to step in? Taylor Rapp, Cam Lewis. How do you round out the depth? And then, of course, the special teams conversation. Tyler Bass, Sam Martin, Brandon Codrington. We'll talk about all of that tomorrow unless some crazy news happens, in which case we'll push that one day. But don't miss anything. Make sure that you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills, and I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.